Hello and a happy Friday to Mr. Patrick's Corner. Today we're going to talk about the Dutch farmers in the Netherlands. They have a little issue with their prime minister. He's kind of like a dope of Trudeau and our own Gavin Newsom. He has the intelligence of a wombat, and that's doing a disservice to wombats. The Prime Minister of the Netherlands has come up with this idea that they have to cut their cattle herds in half, destroy their agricultural system, and they're going to get the nitrogen. Nitrogen is one of the gases. It's 73% of the gases that we breathe. The other is oxygen, which is not a lot, and carbon dioxide. So these guys in the EU have sent word to the Dutch Prime Minister that they have to stop global warming by cutting it by 30%. Now the funny thing is, you think that these farmers don't want to save on fertilizer, on feedstocks for their cattle? My God, they're the second greatest exporter of agricultural products in the world. The United States is number one. And if you look at the Netherlands, you look at the United States and you say to yourself, how is that possible that a little country like that can produce all that food? Because they're very efficient. Believe it or not, in the early 60s and 70s, they were trying to close out all farmers in the Netherlands again. And the Dutch farmers said, hey, we like being farmers. We don't want to send our crops overseas to be grown. We can grow them right here and make a profit. And it turned out they could. You see, if you listen to these European in the EU, they wanted to get all their agricultural stuff sent out to Israel, the North Africa, and then have it shipped back in. And that's not a good idea, especially in the Netherlands, because during the war, World War II, the Dutch ate tulip bulbs to stay alive. Tulip bulbs. And they have this nutcase there, and the green environment. Look, there's no country more green than the Netherlands. They understand water, they understand soil, and they don't want to spend money because they're cheap. And Dutch farmers are cheap. And you think that they don't study ways to save on fertilizer? The trouble is we have a fertilizer problem in this country because we're losing topsoil, because we're not rotating our crops more. The Canadian farmers have been given the same order by Justin Trudeau, the great Canadian farmer. Oh, that's right, he's a politician. He's not a farmer. He doesn't know squat about farming. He's got this idea, well, we're going to have to go to biodiesel. And I like biodiesel, but I don't think it should be used in place of regular crops that people eat. And the Dutch and the Canadians are good at using biodiesel. They make it out of grain that isn't any good anymore. So it isn't taken from growing food for people. I love these politicians. God, I look at them and I'm thinking, where did we go wrong to have such a bunch of clunkheads? You know, Yankee, the word Yankee comes from the time that the Dutch in New York were driven out by the British, and the Dutch would say Yankee, which meant cheesehead. It was an insult. Well, now we have more insults because these guys are absolutely stupid. They want to save us from global warming. Okay. You know, the funny thing is, if Vladimir Putin hadn't invaded Ukraine, he could have gotten a whole bunch of farmers to go to Siberia and work. Dutch farmers, because they'll sell their farms in the Netherlands by good topsoil, good grain, good everything out of Central Asia. And it'd be like Catherine the Great. Catherine the Great brought in German farmers from the and settled them in the Volga river valleys, and they were called Volga Germans. Then wonderful Stalin didn't like those Germans. Oh, they might go over to the other side, so he sent them to Kazakhstan. Well, what does that have to do with nitrogen in the air and the other stuff? It's just making a point. The point is farmers are a very valuable commodity. In the Central Valley in the 70s, in the 50s and 60s, the Australians went in and got our cotton farmers and sent them to Australia, offered them great deals, and they took it. Now, growing cotton in Australia where you don't have a lot of water, well, that doesn't make exactly a lot of sense, but hey, what do I know, right? Well, the prime minister there said they wanted to get into other fiber because that's what they do. They are an agricultural commodity country. They grow sheep. They even try to bring in water buffalo from Italy and make Parmesan cheese. Well, now they have a problem with water buffalo because water buffalo have now reverted to what they used to be, very violent animals. So they got camels down there, they got water buffalo, they've got wild boar, all the things that people always bring with them that cause a lot of headaches. Well, we have a problem here in this country. We don't have enough water here. We have too much on the East Coast and on the Mississippi. Arkansas had a flash flood. And do you think Biden and those dummies in Congress and the Senate are going to come up with a plan to maybe take the water from the Mississippi area and the East Coast and send a little bit to wonderful the central states like the Southwest, Arizona, Utah? They could fill up those basins, the Colorado River. That would help a great deal. But you see, governments only know how to do one thing. They look at a bunch of figures and forms and they say, well, we'll do this, and this will give us something. Well, the Dutch farmers don't want to sell their land, and the Dutch government said, well, we're going to take it because they're not the United States. In the United States, because of the Fifth Amendment, they got to pay you. And they got to make a reasonable reason to take your land. Because if it's not reasonable, they ain't going to get it. This is the most important thing about the United States and the Netherlands and in Europe. We have rights that are not able. We have the rights that people in the other parts of the world would really appreciate. But we don't appreciate them. We run around with our heads in the air looking for a man on a white horse to lead us. It's like Zapata in Mexico. He made the same point. Stop looking stand up. Better to die on your feet than live on your knees, and stop looking for a man on a white horse to lead you. You got common sense. Use your own common sense. And the Dutch farmers are showing the Dutch people are finally getting to the idea. They're the leading exporter of cheese. They got more cheese than you ever thought of. And then they're told that, oh, you're releasing too much nitrogen in the air from the cow shit. Oy vey. You know, you got to hand it to these people. And you think these, you know, when they grow crops, they're putting nitrogen back into the soil. It is a bank. You use that nitrogen and it's stored. It doesn't go into the atmosphere. It's stored in the ground. The more nitrogen you can put in the ground, the better off it is because they take nitrogen out of the air. But, you know, hey, I'm just an old truck driver. And the truck drivers in Europe, they're standing up with the Dutch farmers. The fishermen are standing up with the Dutch farmers because they understand what they do. These other clowns, they go into their offices and they listen to baloney and then they pack it because they've never grown anything, they've never raised anything, they've never fished for anything. They live in little white towers and they like to preach to these other dummies. And that's the problem. You see, most of the people don't have to grow their own food. But let me tell you, if you got rid of the Dutch farmers, you get rid of 40% of the Dutch farmers, you're going to have a problem, because guess what? You get another pandemic, you won't have any food to eat. And the Germans, well, guess what? The Germans buy 10% of their food from the Dutch. And they're also going after the German farmers. This is like the nuclear reactors that they're so scared of. Well, guess what? They put their faith in stuff that doesn't work. Instead of bringing back nuclear reactors, oh, we might have a tsunami. Right. So they're putting it, and they're burning coal. Coal is worse than anything you can grow. Then you're fighting with a guy named Vladimir Putin, who's pissed because you pushed him to the wall, and he has had it right up to the ears. He ain't going to back down, and he's just as mean and tough and nasty as you could get. And Zelensky, well, look at what he did to his country. And, there's something about running a government that seems to be beyond what Gavin Newsom and wonderful Joe Biden are talking about. Gavin Newsom actually thinks he can run for president. Anybody in the Midwest wants this knucklehead to run for president. God, they should go drink a bottle of scotch and wake up from their stupor and say, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. So today we're talking about the uselessness of government. Government's supposed to help people. Instead, they figure out ways to make things more complicated. You ever ask a truck driver about hours of service, or a farmer about nitrogen? These guys live and breathe on growing and running their operation. They're small businessmen. If they could figure out a way to save money, they would. Well, that's it for this weekend, and I hope you have a nice, wonderful weekend. I hope you subscribe and like. So that's it for this weekend. Bye-bye.